She thought it was the happiest moment of her life, a secret proposal from the man she loved. But just hours later, at his glamorous billionaire ball, he looked her in the eye and acted like he'd never met her. What was he hiding? Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It happened in a quiet garden under soft moonlight. No cameras, no crowds, just him and her. The grand estate behind them buzzed with the prelude to a glamorous evening. Laughter echoing through arched windows, strings of classical music floating into the night. But Elena and Damien were far from it all. They stood on a winding stone path lined with blooming white roses, where time itself seemed to pause. Elena could barely catch her breath. Damien Laurent, the elusive billionaire known for his ruthless business acumen and guarded demeanor, was kneeling before her. The velvet box in his hand caught the moonlight and glimmered, but it wasn't the diamond that stole her breath. It was his voice. Soft, real, vulnerable. "I don't care what anyone says," he whispered, his dark eyes locking with hers. "You're the only one I want. Marry me." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. This was the man who, in public, rarely cracked a smile, who spoke in boardrooms with ice in his voice, who, according to magazines, had no heart to give. But here he was, pouring out everything in 6 trembling words. She didn't even glance at the ring. Not really. She didn't need to. Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded. Yes, Damien." He rose and wrapped her in his arms. His chin rested on the top of her head. The scent of his cologne mixed with the roses. It was real. The cold billionaire was gone. Here stood a man, her man, tender, terrified, and in love. That he kissed her forehead and whispered, "Just wait a little longer. Tonight at the ball, I'll tell everyone." She smiled. "Okay, I trust you." But he didn't. Inside the palace, the ballroom glittered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, casting shimmering reflections on polished floors. Celebrities, socialites, CEOs, and royalty swirled in laughter and conversation. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed. And Elena stood at the top of the marble staircase in her midnight blue gown, a secret ring hidden on her finger, waiting for him. He entered minutes later, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. Heads turned. Whispers filled the air. Damien Laurent, the man of the hour, had arrived, but he didn't walk to her. He didn't take her hand. Instead, he greeted his board members, posed for photos, and smiled for the press. His cold mask was back on, flawless, unreadable, untouchable. Elena's heart thudded in confusion. Had the garden moment just been a dream? No. She touched the ring hidden beneath her glove. It was real. Still, the hours passed, and Damien said nothing. He made speeches. He clinked glasses. He danced, with others. By midnight, she was no longer confused. She was devastated. When he finally approached her, it was behind a pillar, out of sight. "Elena," he whispered, his jaw tense. "I couldn't do it. Not yet." Her eyes blazed. "You promised." "I know. But if I announce this now, it will ruin everything. The merger, the investors, they expect someone else. Someone cleaner." "Cleaner," she repeated, voice trembling. "You mean someone not like me?" He hesitated. "That's not what I meant. You're ashamed of me," she said. "You're afraid I'll mess up your perfect image." "No," he said quickly. "I'm protecting you. Once everything is stable." "You think I want to be a secret?" she cut in. "You think I can wear this ring and pretend it's not real?" His voice softened. "Please, just a little longer." She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped back. "No, Damien, not a little longer. Not another second." She pulled the ring from her finger, pressed it into his palm, and walked away, past the chandeliers, the celebrities, the flash of cameras, and out into the cold night. The headlines the next day were about everything except the woman who had been beside him in that moonlit garden. No one knew her name. No one knew what he had lost. But Damien knew. He sat in his office a week later, staring at the ring she had returned. It hadn't left his desk since. The merger went through. His company hit record numbers, and none of it mattered. Because for the first time, Damien Laurent, the billionaire who had everything, had no one. The billionaire's ball was a spectacle unlike anything Elena had ever witnessed. Held in a palace-like venue nestled in the heart of the city, It was a masterpiece of opulence. Towering golden doors opened into a hall where crystal chandeliers sparkled like falling stars. The marble floors gleamed, polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the glitter of gowns and the glint of diamonds. The air itself seemed scented with wealth, roses, vintage champagne, and the quiet hum of power. Elena arrived alone, just as Damien had asked. Trust me, he had texted earlier that day. I'll make my move soon. Her driver dropped her. At the front steps where paparazzi buzzed like bees around a hive. None pointed their cameras at her. She wasn't famous, wasn't royalty, wasn't anything special to this world, yet. But she didn't mind. Damien had promised. Tonight, he would finally go public. No more hiding. No more secrets. She wore a sleek, body-hugging black gown that shimmered subtly in the light. Her diamond earrings sparkled with every turn of her head. Both were gifts from him. The gown had been delivered to her hotel room with a handwritten note. Wear this tonight. You'll outshine them all. And she did. Heads turned. Whispers stirred. People wondered who the mysterious woman was who walked alone, yet carried herself like she belonged. She made her way to the edge of the ballroom, near a row of ornate columns, and waited. Then, the energy in the room shifted. Gasps followed by a sudden ripple of applause. He had arrived. Damien Laurent, the enigmatic billionaire, stepped into the ballroom with the ease of someone born into power. Surrounded by tight security, blinding flashes from cameras, and reporters shouting his name, he looked every bit the untouchable icon the world believed him to be. Dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, every line of his suit screamed wealth and precision. His hair was perfectly styled. His expression, calm, unreadable, composed. He paused at the entrance, raised one hand, and the crowd cheered louder. A charming smile tugged at his lips as he nodded at various VIPs, royalty, politicians, CEOs. Then his eyes shifted. He saw her, just for a moment. A flicker of recognition. No smile. No nod. No warmth. No hurt. He turned his head and kept walking. Right past her, like she didn't even exist. Elena felt it like a slap. She stood frozen, her heart pounding loud enough to drown out the music. Had she imagined the promise? The text? The gifts? Had the man who whispered, "Trust me," just ghosted her in front of the world? She watched as Damien laughed with investors, toasted with dignitaries, and posed with socialites. He wore the mask well, a man in total control. He was flawless, polished, admired, untouchable. But every time he moved further into the crowd, it felt like another step away from her. Her mind spun back to their late-night phone calls. The walks in Central Park, disguised in baseball caps. The way he'd held her in silence after a long day and whispered, "With you, I don't have to pretend." And now, here she was, pretending she wasn't crushed, pretending she didn't care, pretending she hadn't believed him. She moved toward the bar, needing something, anything, to hold on to. A glass of champagne, a distraction, a reason not to cry. "Everything all right, miss?" the bartender asked softly, sensing her unease. She nodded. Yes, just watching a man forget how to be brave. Hours passed. Damien remained the center of attention. At one point, he danced with a blonde heiress, her laugh high-pitched and practiced. Elena stood in the shadows, fingers curled tightly around her clutch. He never came to her, never spoke her name, never made his move. And in that moment, Elena realized something brutal. He wasn't protecting her from the world. He was protecting his image from her. At midnight, the grand doors opened for the fireworks display. Guests flooded outside to watch. Elena stayed back. One final glance at the man who had once called her everything. He was standing with his PR team, glass raised, camera flash bouncing off his smile. She slipped off the diamond earrings and left them on the edge of the bar. Then she turned and walked out. No one stopped her. No one noticed. Not even him. But as she stepped into the night, alone but no longer waiting, she made herself a promise. The next time she walked into a ballroom, it would be for her. Not for a man who couldn't claim her, but for herself, seen, proud, and never invisible again. At first, Elena thought it must be a mistake. She had replayed his text over and over in her mind. "Trust me, I'll make my move soon." Maybe he was just being careful. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe he was waiting for the cameras to stop flashing for the press to stop trailing him, for the right moment to take her hand in his and show the world. If that's what she told herself as she stood quietly along the ballroom wall, the golden light from the chandeliers bathing her in a soft glow. She looked stunning in her sleek black gown, her diamond earrings catching every glint of light, but it didn't matter. She felt invisible. Hours passed. Damien didn't come that he danced, with models in shimmering gowns, women whose names were often seen in headlines. He laughed. His charm turned on full blast for CEOs and foreign dignitaries. He made a toast about legacy and vision and future plans. And through it all, he never once looked back at her. Elena stood holding a glass of untouched champagne. The bubbles had long gone flat, much like her hope. Her fingers trembled slightly, though she kept her face calm. Elegant, composed. But inside, a storm was beginning. The whispers started small, like a breeze. Who is she? Is she someone's assistant? Why is she standing there alone? She caught snippets here and there. Enough to know she was being noticed, but not in the way she'd hoped. Not as Damien Lawrence's partner, not as the woman he had. Once held in secret gardens and whispered promises to under moonlight that, she was just a question mark. Then she heard it, the one comment that pierced through her like glass. I heard Damien only dates blondes. The group around the speaker laughed. Not cruelly, just casually. Like it was a known fact. Like it was obvious. Like she couldn't possibly be part of his world. Elena felt her throat tighten. Not there. Not yet. She wouldn't cry in that room. She forced a smile onto her face, though it felt like it cracked her soul. She nodded politely at a server who passed by. She even pretended to sip her champagne, though her stomach had twisted into knots. She looked at Damien again. He was standing in the center of a crowd, arm around a well-known heiress, laughing like the world was perfect. His image, flawless. His reputation, untouched. His secret, the woman in the shadows, her. She had met him 2 years ago, far from this world of diamonds and deception. He was quieter then. Tired, even. They talked for hours in a late-night bookstore, and he never once mentioned who he was. They'd fallen slowly. Honestly. At least, that's what she had believed that in private. He told her things no one else knew. Showed her scars beneath the suit. Promised her forever, just as long as she waited. And she had waited. Through closed-door meetings, hush-hush dinners, whispered, not yets. Tonight was supposed to be different, he had said. I want the world to know you. And now the world was laughing. Because the world didn't even know her name. The clock neared midnight. Elena set her champagne glass down on a nearby table. The bubbles were gone, and so was her patience. She took a deep breath and stood taller, head high. Despite the weight in her chest, she walked through the ballroom slowly, her heels echoing softly against the marble floors. Some eyes followed her. Some didn't. Damien didn't notice her. At all. Or if he did, he pretended not to. She walked past him without a word, just a glance. A glance he didn't return. Outside, the night was cooler than she expected. A soft breeze tugged at her gown, her hair, her heart. Elena stepped away from the lights, the voices, the flashbulbs, and false smiles. Away from the man who had once made her feel like everything and now treated her like nothing. She sat on the stone steps outside the venue and looked up at the sky. Chandeliers. No whispers, just stars. She didn't cry right away. She sat in silence, feeling the ache, the disappointment, the bitter taste of a truth she had ignored for too long. Then finally, as the music swelled inside and the fireworks began overhead, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Not because he didn't love her, but because he did, and still chose his image over her. And in that moment, Elena made her decision. She would never again wait for someone to choose her in the dark. She couldn't take it anymore. Every minute that passed, every fake smile Damien flashed at the cameras, every laugh he shared with the people who didn't know the real him, every second crushed her a little more. She moved, not out of impulse, not out of desperation, but out of something deeper, resolve. The moment Elena stepped off the edge of the ballroom floor and onto the center carpet, the room seemed to shift. Conversations softened. A few heads turned. 1 or 2 people paused mid-sip of champagne. She walked straight toward Damien. Her heels clicked softly on the polished marble floor, echoing in the vastness of the golden hall. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Her hands trembled slightly, though she clenched them into fists by her sides. He was speaking to an investor, some European tech mogul. Laughing, gesturing, charming, flawless. Until he saw her. Damien, she said softly, stopping just inches from him. He froze. The smile on his face dropped so fast, it was almost comical. The people around him looked between them, eyebrows raised. Elena, he said quickly, voice low and sharp. What are you doing? She swallowed hard. You told me you'd tell them. That tonight was the night. That you'd finally stand by me. He shifted awkwardly. Not here. Not now. When then? She asked, her voice steady but rising just enough to be heard by those near. After they forget I exist? After you've told another lie on another stage to another group of people who have no idea who you really are. He looked around, clearly uncomfortable now. People were watching. The heiress he'd been talking to earlier narrowed her eyes. The investor took a polite step back. Elena, Damien hissed through clenched teeth. This isn't the place. You know how delicate things are right now. I can't risk everything. There it was. Risked, a word she had heard too many times from his mouth. Always in whispers. Always behind closed doors. A long silence stretched between them. She stared at him. Waiting. Hoping. Dreading. Then came the words that shattered her. I can't risk everything right now. You know how this world works. Her breath caught. There it was, the truth. Not wrapped in excuses or diplomacy. The truth, sharp and cruel and naked. She laughed, just once. Soft. Bitter. Almost like she was laughing at herself. I do know how this world works, she said, voice trembling now. I just didn't realize. You still cared more about it than about me. Elena, please, he said, reaching for her hand. But she pulled back. No, she whispered. Don't. Don't touch me like I matter when you just told me I don't. Of course you matter. Then why are you ashamed of me, Damien? She asked, louder now. Clear. Crystalline. Silence fell around them like a curtain, her voice softened again. You're not ashamed of who I am. You're ashamed of how I look. He didn't answer, he didn't deny it. Because he couldn't. Because it was true. She saw it in his eyes. The fear. The calculation. The careful weighing of image versus honesty, brand versus love. In the world he thrived in, where deals were made over dinners and reputations were built in headlines, she didn't fit, and he wasn't brave enough to fight for her. You told me to trust you, she said. I did, but I won't trust someone who can't stand beside me in the light. Elena, he pleaded again, softer now. Just give me more time. Her heart cracked, not because he didn't love her, but because he did, and still chose not to show it. She looked at him one last time. The man she had loved, the man who had held her in private, praised her brilliance, kissed her forehead like she was his home. The man who, when the world was watching, acted like she was invisible. No more time, she said, with slow, steady grace. Elena turned and walked away. Past the murmurs, past the glances, past the world that didn't know her name. And as she stepped out into the cool night air, something inside her shifted. She was done shrinking to fit someone else's pride. Done waiting for a love that only lived in the shadows. The cameras had missed the biggest story of the night. The woman who chose herself. Elena didn't beg. She didn't scream. She didn't plead for answers or ask for one more reason why. She simply took a deep breath, straightened her back, and lifted her chin. Her heart may have been breaking, but she wouldn't let the world see her crumble. Not for him. Not for anyone who didn't see her worth. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Damien Laurent standing in his million-dollar shame. The man who owned skyscrapers, who moved global markets with a nod, stood frozen as the woman he claimed to love left without another word. As Elena crossed the ballroom floor, heels tapping softly against polished marble. The music continued, but the mood had shifted. People watched, not with mockery, not with scorn, but with something else entirely, respect. Because even in heartbreak, she carried herself like royalty. Her black gown shimmered under the chandeliers. Her eyes, though glassy, held strength. She wasn't a girl crying for validation. She was a woman reclaiming her dignity. Outside, the night air wrapped around her like a blanket. The silence was louder than any music inside. She didn't stop, didn't look back, and the world took notice. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Who is the mysterious woman in black who left Damien Laurent speechless? Queen energy, the unknown guest who stole the spotlight at the billionaire's ball. Unbothered, untouched, unmatched. Photos of her leaving the ballroom, chin high, back straight, eyes forward, circulated on every platform. Social media lit up. Stylists praised her elegance. Feminists praised her courage. Strangers called her a modern-day icon. But Elena? She stayed silent. She didn't need to explain herself. She didn't post cryptic quotes or tearful messages. She didn't need to clap back or clear the air. Her silence was her statement. Damien tried everything that he called. Texted. Sent flowers, roses, lilies, orchids, anything he could think of. Emails poured in. Apologies. Excuses. Desperate promises. I panicked. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, can we talk? Just once. You're the only one who ever really knew me. I'll tell the world tomorrow. I swear. Just come back. But it was too late. Because something powerful had shifted in Elena that night. She had waited long enough to be chosen in the light. Waited through secret dates, hidden gifts, whispered promises. Waited for a man who loved her behind closed doors, but not when it counted. And finally, she was done waiting. That night had taught her something the world rarely says out loud. Being loved in private means nothing. When someone is too weak to stand beside you in public, she wasn't ashamed of who she was. Her skin, her story, her strength, they were not liabilities. They were her power, and she deserved more than a hidden romance. She deserved more than to be edited out of someone's life for the sake of their image. She deserved to be seen, to be celebrated, to be chosen, out loud. Weeks later, a new woman graced magazine covers. Not for scandal, not for drama, but for rising. Elena was offered deals, fashion, speaking, interviews. She turned most of them down, not out of bitterness, but because she didn't need the spotlight to feel whole. She had already reclaimed her story. People still whispered. They always would. But this time, they whispered with wonder. And Damien? He watched from the sidelines as the woman he didn't have the courage to claim became someone the world couldn't ignore. Studio microphone. Sometimes the real betrayal isn't what someone does to you. It's what they're too afraid to do for you. If you ever feel like you have to hide who you are to be loved, walk away. Because the right person will never keep you a secret. The right person will hold your hand in the light. Speak your name with pride. And choose you. Not when it's easy, but when it's hard. Because real love doesn't hide. It stands up, thumbs up like red heart, subscribe, bell, hit the bell for more powerful, true style stories that deserve to be heard. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not too different. You are worth being seen.